Do you think people can have too much protein on carnivore?
I don't actually, only in the sense that it would be at the exclusion of fat, for people who want to perform. And so if people have performance goals, I think it's going to be a problem. Basically, what we find is that there's no evidence that a lot of protein will affect the kidneys in any negative way, nor the liver. And so these are misconstruals, if that's even a word. These are misunderstandings of the data, and if you talk to a nephrologist, and even Jason Fung has talked about this, multiple times, that there's no evidence that high protein is bad for the kidneys. Your body can deal with it and excrete it if you don't need it, but I don't think you can get too much protein. And I think most people will find satiety way before, and they were way before they would get to any amount of protein that people would worry about, but it's pretty clear that for most people, more protein is better, whether it's from a muscle standpoint or a prevention of sarcopenia standpoint. Sarcopenia is loss of lean muscle mass. I think this is one of the problems with people on ketogenic diets is they don't get enough protein. They start to lose lean muscle mass. So I think I think it's more of a problem to have not enough protein than it is to have too much.
Yep. And what about for gluconeogenesis? Do you think too much protein causes that, or is that kind of a myth or overstated?
Yeah, it is overstated. It depends on the hormonal sort of the hormonal context, right? So the idea is that gluconeogenesis is going to be driven by glucagon, right? It's going to be a matter of the insulin glucagon ratio, and so gluconeogenesis and spiking glucose when you eat a lot of protein doesn't happen on a ketogenic state. So when you're in ketosis and your insulin is low, and the insulin glucagon ratio is low, we just don't see the glucose spiking, when people are on mixed diets, right? So if someone has insulin resistance at baseline, which could be due to underlying inflammation or problems, separate than what they're eating, if they're eating a mixed diet and they're usually doing glycolysis and running on glucose, we know that if you eat protein, while you're eating glucose, that you will get a big spike of insulin and your blood sugar that may affect your blood sugar significantly. I mean, generally, and now we're just talking about the insulin levels, but your hormonal context is going to be very different when you are eating a ton of protein on a mixed diet as opposed to eating a ton of protein in a ketogenic diet. So it's very different. What we know is that on a mixed diet, if you eat a lot of protein, your insulin will spike, and you could have postprandial hyperglycemia. You could have more glucose in your blood then. But that will be due to the insulin rather than the protein. It's a little bit complex, but no, I don't think excess protein is going to lead to massive amounts of gluconeogenesis. And if you look at continuous glucose monitoring of people on carnivore diets, it's the most boring thing you've ever seen. It's a straight line. For people that aren't familiar with continuous glucose monitoring, we can measure the serum glucose level in real time throughout the day. And this is generally done for people with type 1 or type 2 diabetes, but it's becoming more and more in vogue for those of us in the health space. You see Ben Greenfield and these guys wearing a CGM all the time just to see how what they're doing affects their blood glucose. Well, I can tell you that the postprandial insulin and the overall insulin levels are going to look very different. And subsequently the postprandial glucose levels and this fasting insulin and glucose levels are going to look very different whether you're on a mixed diet or a ketogenic diet. But in my Instagram a few months ago, I posted a CGM of one of my friends who's on a carnivore diet. And what you can see is that you can't even tell when he's eating, So there's no real indication there's any significant, gluconeogenesis happening when he eats a ton of protein. I think when he did that, he was doing one meal a day. And so he was probably eating 2+ pounds of meat a day. So you're talking 200 grams of protein. His blood sugar didn't move a bit. So hopefully that helps illustrate that for people.
Yeah, I actually did an experiment with one, I think in January, and it was just a flat line all the way across. So
were you doing carnivore?
Yeah. Carnivore, mainly carnivore, like avocado and things like that a few days. But yeah.
What was your average? Do you remember?
Oh, I can't remember right now, but it was right in the middle.
It's flat.
Yeah, exactly.
It's flat. It doesn't even move all day. You don't see any blood sugar change on carnivore,